Hello, today we're going to have a look at a piano accordion. I don't normally work on piano accordions, but this belongs to a very good friend of mine, and I've said I'll try and fix the problem he's got with it, which is that the action is very rattly and the sound is coming from typical Hohner. You let go of the button or the key, and as the pallet closes, it's got a hard surface on it, it makes a noise. There's another noise on here as well, which is a squeaky noise. I don't know if this is going to show up. Which I think is from the springs under the keys. So we'll start with the usual thing of taking out bellows pins. We don't actually need to get to the reeds for this, but ooh, they're a bit tight. But it helps to just have less bulk and weight to move around. So the parts that we need access to are in here, and the springs are under the keyboard, so I'm not quite sure how far we'll have to go. There's some screws here to remove the grill cover, so we'll start by taking those off. And then the grill lifts off. You'll just have to unhook it from behind the couple of switches. There we go. So what we have to do here is to remove these pallets and replace the felt and leather which is underneath them, which looks, yeah, it's pretty thin. A coupler mechanism is kind of in the way, so I'm going to remove that as well. And this is going to have some connection underneath, which we'll have to disengage. Yeah, there's a push rod from each coupler button which comes down and connects onto these rockers which actually operate the registers. So the only way to get the whole thing out is to unhook those, and then they push down through the hole. And I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but there's a little pointy spike on the end of each one, which is used when you reassemble it, because that comes through this felt seal. It's to make an airtight joint. It will work. Alright, that's that free. So now with a bit of pulling here to get access to the pallets, so I won't take it out any further than that. So removing pallets, they're held on with various different kinds of material over the years. This is some kind of synthetic glue on here. Sometimes you can just break these off. Yeah, this is coming off all right. It's fairly soft. Now I'm also going to remove the reed blocks from the other side so that we don't drop any debris into the reeds. Take all these pallets off. Sometimes you need to use a pair of smooth-jawed pliers or something similar to get a grip of pallets that are awkward to reach, where there's not space to get your fingers in. And you can see that there's also bits of glue left on the end of the levers, so that'll need to be cleaned off. Usually just run a knife up each side. So most of this job is actually cleaning up the levers, and then we'll have to clean up the pallets, take off all the glue from the top of the pallets, take off this leather, which is really hard, and the felt underneath, which is also actually pretty hard, and we'll put some new stuff on there. We are going to reface these pallets. The leather on them, the felt on them is very thin, and in some cases it's quite hard. Here's one I tried to strip off, and the leather, the felt is actually soaked with glue, so the thing is almost completely solid. So to do this, to clean these up, we're going to take off the felt and leather. We're going to sand the surface clean. We're going to remove the last traces of adhesive from the top, including cleaning out the groove. And then we've got the pallets ready to put new facings on and put back in the instrument. So to start with, I'm going to use a Stanley knife to peel off as much as possible of the old facing material. Sometimes it's easier than others. This one's a bit softer. You can actually see the wood there where almost all the felt's off, whereas that one's got a lot left on it. And it's a tedious job, but it doesn't take that long if you just get down to it. And I'll try and get the knife underneath the felt, as near to underneath the felt as I can get without actually cutting off bits of wood. Any that's left will come off in the next stage. There's another one where the felt is almost solid. It's just been put on with far too much glue, and the glue's soaked into the felt. So gluing felt is tricky business, because this can happen if you use too much glue, and if you don't use enough glue, the pallet facings can fall off when you don't want them to, but it's not hard to get the right amount. And so there's the pallets. I'm not doing them all for the camera, just a sample. So now I'm going to use this is a sheet of 60 grits, a piece of paper just glued onto a piece of flat wood, and with this we can I'm just going to use the part that's been used already, so it's not quite so aggressive. You can see the felt coming off. Still, see that's felt solidly filled with glue. Now we're nearly there, so we need to just press a little bit harder on this end. Okay, that's clean enough. There's a tiny bit of green there, but that's of no consequence. We'll come to this in the glue on the top in a minute. So that's come off much more quickly because there wasn't so much glue soaked into the felt. And there's a lot of felt coming off. And you can see there that the abrasive's taken more off on what was the furthest edge away from me, so I'm going to turn that round. And that finishes off the job, because we don't want to remove any wood from there at all, and certainly don't want to leave it sloping surface. You do need quite strong fingers for this, and a little tip: if sometimes it can be a bit slippery because these sides are sloping. Sometimes I just lick my fingertips, and that just gives me a slightly better grip. Okay, so that's all the top's done. Now I'll just knock off the felt into the bin, and now I'm going to start removing the adhesive from the top. So I'm going to sand that surface flat, and then it goes down the sides a bit, so I'm going to sand each of the sides as well. And because there's only a small amount of wood here, you've got to be careful, especially with a brand new sheet of paper that this is, which cuts quite quickly. I don't want to remove any wood, or any more than I can help, so I'm just being careful to hold this so that it's removing the adhesive, and that's down to flat now. So then I'll do this side. Doesn't take very long because there's not much on there, and the other side, and a bit down. Now that's actually a concave surface there. It must have been cut with some kind of milling machine cutter, so I can't sand that off. And again, repeat the process. I don't claim to be showing the best way of doing this. This is just the way that works for me. And if anybody else wants to try it, you're welcome. And let me know in the comments if it works for you. Right, so that's all the adhesive off, so we're finished with this board now. So now we've got to get the last bits of glue out of that groove, because the lever for the keyboard has got to fit easily in there, so we can glue it in freshly. And I'm using a small file which has got teeth on the edge, and the edge is a bit narrower than the groove. So I've just get that in there, and again being careful not to remove wood. I only want to remove the glue, and it can be a bit awkward to get out. You get these kind of little build up of messy little bits of glue, which sometimes you have to scrape off from the outside. And there, that's fine, that's clean. I have this is part of my workbench that I use for testing reeds and things, and the edge of this just happens to be a convenient height to use as a stop for holding these pallets while I file them. So if you don't have something like that, you could just clamp a piece of wood or glue two bits of wood together to make something that would do the job. Because if you try and hold this and do the same thing, it's much harder, because this can slip out of your fingers. You just have less control of what you're doing. So I'm trying to remove the glue from the base of the groove and from each side, and then you only get this little collection of stuff at the end that you can flick off. So most of these I did earlier, but I'm doing enough so you can see how the process works more than once. Just going to put a knife on that last bit there, it doesn't want to come off. And it's important to get all this old glue cleaned off, because the bottom of the groove needs to be smooth and flat so that when the lever arm goes in there, there's nothing in the way, and it has a little bit of sideways clearance so you could get the pallet straight on over the holes that it's got to cover. So there we are. And there's the ones I did earlier. So they're all ready now to apply the new leather and felt facing. This is the material I'm going to use. It's nice leather from Carini in Italy. It's about 1 millimetre thick, and there's about 1 millimetre of felt on there. This leather's slightly thicker than the stuff that came off, but there's a bit of leeway in the thickness. You don't want to make it enormously thicker, but there's some adjustment in the levers. So we're going to glue this, we're going to glue all the pallets onto the felt first, then once the glue's dry, then cut them out. It's much easier doing that than trying to cut separate pieces and then glue them on. So the glue I'm going to use is actually this, it's a kind of PVA. I use it for all sorts of things, but the glue you use is not critical for this. It doesn't need to be high strength. It just needs to be enough to stick felt, because the felt is being held in place most of the time by the pressure of the pallets pushing down onto the fondo. So I'm going to just squeeze out some glue onto a little plastic board I've got here, and I'm going to lay out the felt. And I'm going to take the pallets one at a time, and I'm going to glue them, let's say which way, I'm going to go that way. I'm going to glue them in lines along here, so that they're just touching each other. Right, so I'm going to glue these on. I'm going to apply the glue with a spatula, which allows me to put a nice thin layer of glue on, so we don't soak the glue into the felt. Place that in position. Press it down. It doesn't need any more. It doesn't need to be clamped. It doesn't need to be put under a weight. Just with this glue anyway, just lay it on, press it down firmly by hand, and just carry on. It is important to get the glue right to the edges when you're doing this, because if it's not right to the edges, you can get the lining material beginning to peel off. Now I've got to be careful here, because the leather doesn't go as far as the edge of the felt, so that's the last one I can put on there. The reason I use this little plastic card to put the glue on to work from is, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it allows me to put enough glue out to do a few pallets. I don't want to leave it out too long because it dries up, and any that's left on there after I've finished, I'll just allow it to dry, and because it's a smooth shiny plastic, that glue will just peel off, so it leaves the card clean for next time. And I only squeeze out enough glue to do a few batteries, a few pallets at a time. And the last few pallets. And here's something you need to check at this point, and that is that you've got all the pallets, because it's very, very easy while you're doing all the cleaning for one of them to get lost. Usually on the floor, sometimes underneath or behind something, sometimes in the bin. But this instrument has 21 keys, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 21 pallets. So that's all great, we're done there. So most of these have been drying for a while now, so we're just going to cut these out. I'm sliding the scalpel with a nice sharp blade, uses the pallets as a guide. And there we have our pallets all nicely refaced.